They could have used that insight to destroy the people who had hurt them. They knew the vulnerabilities, the fears, the weak points. They chose not to. They removed the toxic people and moved forward. The restraint was not weakness. It was genuine disinterest in revenge. Jung was struck by how much power they refused to abuse. Their presence created what he called the mirror effect. Inauthentic people became uncomfortable without a word being spoken. Manipulators felt exposed. Energy vampires sensed they could not feed and moved on. Authentic people, for the first time, felt safe. They recognized someone who saw them clearly and did not judge. The awakened empath became a living filter. Dysfunction was repelled. Growth was attracted. They no longer had to vet people actively. The integrated presence did it. Those who could not handle the clarity left. Those who wanted real connection came closer. The entire social circle changed without forced effort. They rebuilt on different foundations. Careers that honored the sensitivity instead of exploiting it. Friendships based on reciprocity instead of rescue. Relationships entered as whole people, not as saviors. Homes that became sanctuaries instead of open hospitals. Time that became precious. Energy that became sacred. They understood that protecting inner peace was not selfish. It was necessary for survival and essential for any real contribution they would make. The moment they stopped caring about other people's dysfunction was the moment they started caring for their own soul. The highest form of self-love. Not narcissism, but the recognition that empathy is a gift that requires protection, boundaries, and conscious direction. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Martyrdom serves no one. Jung saw this as the birth of a sovereign individual, someone who had passed through unconscious empathy, through betrayal and collapse, through shadow integration, and emerged able to choose their own reality. They no longer reacted to emotional demands. They responded from wholeness. Every action became intentional. The empath who stops caring has not lost their humanity. They have found their power. They have not become cold. They have become conscious. They have not stopped loving. They have learned to love themselves with the same fierce devotion they once gave away without measure. This is why Jung called it the final stage of spiritual awakening. Not because growth is finished, but because the fundamental lesson has been integrated. Sensitivity is sacred. Energy is valuable. Peace is non-negotiable. Anyone who cannot respect those truths has no place in the life. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. The awakened empath becomes what the world needs and rarely deserves. Someone who can feel deeply without disappearing. Someone who can love powerfully without enabling dysfunction. Someone who can see clearly without turning cynical. Love with boundaries, compassion with wisdom, kindness with strength, empathy with sovereignty. This is not a loss, it is a victory, not over other people, but over the conditioning that said an empath's worth is measured by how much they are willing to sacrifice. The one who stops maintaining peace in toxic systems has begun cultivating peace in their own soul. They have rejected the lie that goodness requires suffering and that love demands self-abandonment. The moment the empath stops caring is not the end. It is the beginning of their sovereignty, and that is what the world actually needs. Not more people who empty themselves endlessly. More people who have learned to use the gift consciously, powerfully, and selectively. If this is landing for you, stay with it. You did not imagine the weight you have been carrying. You did not imagine the silence that arrived when you finally set it down. You earned this through every moment you suffered without speaking. You are not becoming less. You are becoming whole. Welcome to your awakening. You are finally free. The second stage brought a deeper shift. Figures began to appear in dreams. Animals, wise elders, guides, or watchful presences. These figures did not threaten or command. They accompanied. Jung recognized them as archetypes, universal symbols embedded in the collective human psyche. When these figures appeared repeatedly, he understood that the ego was no longer guiding the process. Something deeper had taken over. The third stage was the most emotionally powerful. Dreams became luminous and vivid. Patients described radiant fields, glowing cities, and figures that seemed to be made of light itself. Many awoke overwhelmed, not with fear, but with awe. Tears were common, not from sadness, but from the intensity and beauty of what they had experienced. Jung wrote that these dreams often felt more real than waking life, as if consciousness itself had shifted into a deeper, more authentic layer of reality, one untouched by time, identity, or fear. Then came the fourth and final stage. In this stage, the sense of being a separate individual dissolved entirely. Dreams no longer centered on the dreamer as a distinct self. Instead, symbols of wholeness appeared: circles, spirals, mandala-like forms, images without clear boundaries or centers. The ego disappeared. What remained was unity, pure awareness without separation. This was not philosophy or religious speculation. It was pattern. Jung observed it across decades of research and hundreds of patients, and the sequence never changed. Then Jung noticed something even more unsettling. The same transformation began appearing in people who were not dying. Individuals who explored their unconscious deeply through meditation, dream analysis, or what Jung called active imagination, reported the same symbols, the same stages, and the same dissolution of ego. People far from death were touching the same psychological territory as those approaching it. That was the moment Jung understood the truth. This process was not about dying. It was about awakening. The self does not wait for the end of life to reveal itself. It has been communicating all along. Through dreams you ignore, emotions you suppress, symbols you dismiss, and moments of synchronicity that briefly interrupt your sense of normal reality and quietly demand attention. Most people, Jung believed, live on the surface of themselves. They defend identities shaped by fear, approval, and conditioning. They mistake the ego for the self and spend their lives protecting something temporary, fragile, and endlessly anxious. The ego is not the enemy. It is a tool, a structure that helps us navigate the world, but it is not who we truly are. In his final years, Jung came to a conclusion that many misunderstood. He said, "I do not believe in God." He was not rejecting meaning, spirituality, or the sacred. What Jung was rejecting was the idea of God as an external figure, something separate from human consciousness. What he had come to understand was that what people call God is not a being outside the psyche, but the deepest layer of consciousness itself, not something to worship from afar, but something to realize within. Jung's final insight was simple and deeply unsettling. You are not a body that possesses consciousness. You are consciousness temporarily expressed through a body. And when the body dies, consciousness does not end. It returns to what it has always been. So what does this mean for you right now, while you are still alive? Jung believed the self cannot be found by looking outward. No achievement, belief system, or relationship can reveal it. The self reveals itself only when attention turns inward, and the process Jung called individuation begins with one essential question: who are you when no one is watching? Not who you think you should be, not who your parents wanted you to become, not who society expects you to perform as, but who you are beneath every mask and role. Most people avoid this question because it leads directly to the shadow, the parts of the psyche that were rejected, buried, or denied in order to be accepted. Emotions deemed unacceptable, desires labeled dangerous, truths that threatened belonging. Jung discovered something profound. The shadow is not the enemy. It is the doorway. Wholeness does not come from rejecting darkness in favor of light. It comes from integration, from accepting the full range of what you are without judgment. Jung described signs that the self is calling: a growing sense of disconnection from the life you built, intensifying dreams, a desire for solitude, not because you reject others, but because you need to hear yourself, a quiet collapse of beliefs once held without question, and a pull towards something unnamed yet undeniably real. When this pull appears, Jung believed there are only two choices: ignore it and live with a quiet sense of inner division that never fully disappears, or answer it, turn inward, face what you have been avoiding, and meet the part of you that has been waiting beneath every mask. Jung's final message was not about waiting for death to understand life. It was about waking up now, while there is still time. Stop defending an identity built only to survive. Stop living on the surface. Turn inward and remember what you have always been. You are not losing anything when you die. You are returning to what you forgot. Whole, eternal, free. The self has been waiting for you your entire life. The only question is, will you meet it before it is too late?